Are you having a hard time in the endgame right now? Looking for a character who can really provide consistent results and allow you to really control the pace of the game? Well, not to worry. Welt is your man. In this video, we're going to go over 3 reasons why you should build Welt. And toward the very end, we'll go over and ask the question, are Eidolons necessary? So let's go straight to it. All that being said, if you enjoy the content on this channel and you want to see more, then be sure as always to like, comment, and subscribe. And let's get straight into the first point. So if you're looking for a character who really wants to control the pace and momentum of any cycle within Honkai Star Rail, then look no further than Welt. Welt is the sustain master. He is a character that can really take control of any situation and turn the tides in his favor in a matter of seconds. And we're going to be talking specifically about his technique, which is arguably one of the most busted techniques in the entire game, and his ultimate, which again, when paired with his technique, can really do devastating damage. Now, of course, that being said, his entire kit is exceptionally good. His basic attack, his skill, they all, of course, really coincide and really meld well together. But of course, we'll talk about his ultimate. So what does his ultimate do? Well, his ultimate summons a black hole to deal damage to all enemies on the field with a base chance percentage to inflict imprisonment, delaying the actions of the enemy up to 40% and reducing their speed by 10%. So this effect is really important to really discuss, because imprisonment is an ability that, unlike, let's say, freeze or any other type of debuff, imprisonment is just crazy strong in that it allows you, Welt, to basically give your team the advantage almost every single time. Not only that, but it just gives you opportunities to do actions that you normally wouldn't be able to do had you not had Welt on the team. So being able to reduce speed is incredible. And on top of that, delaying their actions is crazy. So for that to happen, you want to be able to, break the opponent's toughness, which again, that's what Welt can easily do with his skill. So all in all, his whole entire kit just gives him great accessibility. And when you tie that in with his technique, which essentially is a very strong ability, where the moment you go into battle, the moment that you engage with the enemy, after using your technique, it creates a dimension that lasts for roughly 15 seconds. And so enemies within this domain or dimension have their movement speed reduced by 50%. And upon entering battle with enemies in the dimension, there is a 100% base chance to imprison the enemies for 1 turn. And even more so, the imprisoned enemies have their actions delayed by 20% and speed reduced by 10%. And so again, you rack that on top of your ultimate, which again is such an impactful combination and can really be deadly. So if you want a character that can really just help you to sustain in any content, whether it be Memory of Chaos, whether it be Swarm Disaster or Simu, Welt is your best friend. He can really turn the tides in your favor almost immediately with his abilities. So that being said, let's move on to the second point. The Swarm Disaster. Everyone's favorite mode, filled with RNG and these non-stop onslaughts of disgusting looking bugs. Well, here comes Welt to save the day. Welt is an impactful character, and honestly, when you combine his technique and ultimate, you have arguably the Swarm Disaster king. When it comes to clearing this content, Welt does it better than most characters in the game, just simply because he's able to stall so much of the pressure that a lot of these insects or the swarm infections tend to do. And if you're lucky enough to get all of your eggs in the same basket when it comes to your blessings, then Welt will bless you nevertheless. And of course, you know, Swarm Disaster being arguably the hardest bit of content right now, where we've yet to see or know what 11 and 12 will be for MOC when it comes out. But right now, as it stands, the Swarm Disaster is by far the hardest bit of content, and Welt makes it look very easy. And that's just because so much of his kit gives the rest of his team a chance to do things that they normally would not do. So you're able to essentially tell the enemy, hey, it's no longer your turn, and you're going to have to go back in line and wait for a very long time before you act again. And by the time they get a chance to act anyway, you'll likely have your ultimate ready, and you'll be able to cycle through, rinse and repeat, and therefore not give these Swarm Disaster bugs any chance to survive whatsoever. So if you're having trouble with the Swarm Disaster and you need a character that can just really help to erase all of those insects from top to bottom, Welt is literally the inspector. He is the pesticide that will come through and eradicate all threats, so long as you build him correctly and so long as you have a good team to help sustain and keep him alive. Welt will do nothing but do his job and do it well. That being said, let's move on to the final point. So if the previous 2 points didn't sell you enough, then hopefully this last one will. And that is, Welt is a multi-threat. That is, he has a kit that is just overloaded with potential, and no matter what he's doing, he can do it very well. Some characters, when you place them on a team, they have a very specific role, and that role really is what suits them. With Welt, on the other hand, he can do just about anything. He can crowd control, he can be a great DPS with great damage output, he can maintain SP for the team by using his basic attack. He doesn't have to always commit to using his skill. He also amplifies damage and just, you know, everything in between. And when you pair him with, let's say, the likes of Pella, who can just shred your defense, or if you have Gwenaifen, who can just do a lot of breaking, you're just looking at a character who can really help other characters, but also help himself. He is just a self-sufficient character that can do anything for his teammates, and that is where Welt really shines. And he's great both on offense and on defense. That's one of the most important aspects too, is that, as I said before, some characters really have a primary focus or a goal in mind. They're really offensive, like let's say Lune, who's just, you know, massive damage output. Or you have someone defensive, or someone who's really, you know, support oriented, who wants to heal. Of course, Welt can't heal, but he can deal a lot of damage. He can deal a lot of sustain for his team. He can just do whatever he needs to do. And he's just also a rarity in the game. That's also another thing. Imaginary as an element in Honkai Star Rail, as we know, is a pretty rare element to deal with. You'll oftentimes run into things like fire and ice and quantum even, but running into imaginary units is somewhat rare. And this is why I brought up the Swarm Disaster as an example, because this is where Welt can really utilize his kit to the best of his abilities and really just make great use of the game's mechanics in his favor. So all in all, if you're looking for a character that really, again, has everything in his kit straight out the bat, you know, straight out the door pretty much, at E0, he's still a very, very powerful character, and we'll get into his Eidolons very shortly. But if that's what you're looking for, a straight out of the box character who has everything you need to pretty much beat any content in Honkai Star Rail currently, then Welt is your pick. So that being said, let's move on to the last and very last final point, and that is the question of, are Eidolons necessary? So E1 in my opinion is where I would personally feel you could stop. If you go beyond this, it's really icing on the cake. But the reason why E1 is so impactful, and we'll read it out loud here, it says, Legacy of Honor. After Welt uses his ultimate, his abilities are enhanced. The next 2 times he uses his basic attack or skill, deals additional damage to the target equal to 50% of his basic attack's damage multiplier or 80% of his skill's damage multiplier, respectively. So just to keep it short and sweet and not to go too, into jargon and detail, essentially what this means is everything within his kit is amplified. You're basically doing more damage with both your basic and your skill, which is going to once again amplify this character to the next level. So the moment you have this, you are set. You can stop at E1 and you can continue to play the game, and you can pretty much erase and destroy and delete anything that comes down your path. Now, of course, E2, Conflux of Stars, when his talent is triggered, Welt regenerates 3 energy. This, of course, as I said before, it's a bonus. It's an icing on the cake. Is it something that you really need to be getting or chasing after? Not really, but it does help with his energy. But if you have other characters like, let's say, Ting Yun on your team, or just other characters that can really help to generate energy for him, Ho-Ho, for example, then this is just, again, icing on the cake. E4, Appellation of Justice, base chance for skill to inflict speed reduction increases by 35%. This is certainly a great addition to his kit. Being able to reduce speed in this game is really effective, especially for a turn-based game such as Star Rail. But again, is it something you really need to chase after? Not necessarily. It really is just icing on the cake. But I will say the benefit of Welt is that he is a standard banner character, which means the likelihood of you getting these things will be much higher versus a limited event banner character. So the chance of you getting these Eidolons is definitely higher than most. And lastly, Prospect for Glory E6. When using your skill, it deals damage for 1 extra time to a random enemy. So typically you'll hit an enemy for about 3, and then you're going to do an additional. So that's 4, plus you have an additional 3 afterwards. So you're doing some pretty decent damage after you use your skill. But again, this is all the way at E6. Is it something you really need? Not really. It's extra bonus damage. But again, I would personally just stop at E1 and you are pretty much set and good to go for the rest of your Star Rail career. So that being said, I hope you enjoyed this content. If you want to see more content like this on the channel, be sure as always to like, comment, subscribe. And as always, new warriors, stay strong and keep fighting. Peace.